What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 410 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. My co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
How's it going? I missed you.
It's good. It's good.
That's very good to hear. Joining us this week is Sara Richard. Sara is an artist and illustrator who has worked on titles like Gem and the Holograms and My Little Pony. She illustrated the Eisner-nominated Kitty and Dino and was nominated for 2 Ringo Awards last year. One for her work on The Ghost, the Owl, and one for Best Cover Artist. Her latest work can be found in the new book, Greek Mythology, The Gods, Goddesses, and Heroes Handbook, available for pre-order now. Sara, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you for having me.
I probably should have let you know that I had a whole thing written out, but we're just flying by the seat of our pants, I guess. But thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We have a lot to talk about in terms of things that I want to touch on. I will start with this. I think I had a new first in 400 episodes of doing this, in that doing research and looking up stuff and trying to come up with interesting things to ask you and to talk to you about, and looking at your work. It wound up costing me money.
What? What up?
Because
you need bail? Do you need bail money?
I don't need bail money yet.
I can't help you with that. I'm just an artist. I have no bail money.
In bouncing around to different websites, wound up on your site, which eventually directed me to the shop, and then $40 later, I have hopefully some prints coming my way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll get to the post office tomorrow, I swear.
No, honestly, take your time. Like, I have been ordering stuff like crazy the last couple weeks, like just small things, and like I'm used to it just taking with this, especially with all the post office stuff these days. It's great. Everything's terrible.
Make my life great.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, now I have sub questions and I already want to divert from my. Has this been impacting you as an artist and like getting merchandise and product out the door? Has the postal service been troubling?
Yeah, it's been a real pain. I mean, for the most part, everything's getting through, but it's kind of costing me a little bit extra. Some stuff I have to send priority just to make sure it gets to where it's going, because first class mail has been kind of iffy. It's been for the most part okay, but anything going to Canada takes a cross country trip to just go up to Toronto, and I'm just in New Hampshire, so there's packages that have more air mileage than I have had in some years. So, but yeah, just it hasn't been terrible. It's more my stress buying on Etsy and eBay. I'm still waiting on a few things. Priceless antiques. There's only one of and everything. But anyway, that's fine.
Yeah, likewise. Because I follow your Instagram, and I haven't been to your shop in a while, because occasionally we'll be able to see you around conventions here and there.
Yep.
And so then I also, yeah, we managed to go to like the last 2, because they're on the same weekend. So like for me, C2E2 was the last convention, because I don't think any followed after that. And JR made it to PAX East. Yeah, and then there's been no more since. But yeah, I plan on ordering some pins off your site as well. But
yeah, I'm hoping to do some more. I was going to do a bunch more pin designs this year, but I mean, I'll probably do some more towards the end of the year, maybe start of next year, because I do have a bunch of designs in mind. It's just, kind of up in the air right now. Mm-hmm. And just getting them back, from overseas is always kind of tricky too. So just waiting till everything sort of settles down a little bit, I guess, whenever that'll happen. But yeah, the pins have been really cool. Like, I actually sent one out to be in Wired magazine. I did a bunch of magazine stuff this year, just advertising. But yeah, British Wired has the cat on the skull pin, so that's been kind of exciting. And then I have some pins at the Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's pretty cool. Anything dealing with the cemetery, I'm just a fan of. So it's been fun.
The world of pins is so, and we've discussed this on the show, like how, at least to us, it felt like, at least maybe to me, because Alex has been collecting for a lot longer than me, it just feels like all of a sudden it was, hey, here's this whole subgenre of stuff for you to get obsessed with and spend a lot of money on.
Yeah.
And like
it's like small stuff. So like especially at conventions, you know, like the thing I hear the most is like, oh, I don't have wall space for this print, but it's like, well, you got a shirt and you want to put this on your shirt.
I never thought I would be so concerned with accessorizing my pins.
I mean, there's some great like display game out there. Like people have sent pictures of their display, and it's just like that is an art in itself. Things like organized out by genre and everything, and it's cool. It's just like little pieces of wearable art. It's really interesting, and kind of figuring out a readable design is an art in itself as well. Like you could do a little doodle and be like, well, that'd be kind of neat, but it comes out as like this kind of blurb of lines sometimes, and it's like trying to figure out how to work around that's been interesting. But yeah, I love pins. It's so cool. It's fun to trade them and everything. I've got so many different artist pins from trades at conventions and stuff, and Instagram too. Like I'll do Instagram trades, and that's always really fun.
I've been working on a tapestry of pins that hang on my studio door, which now you just can't open the door too fast, or like it swings and claps.
It's very heavy.
Make sure all the backings are on that, or you have like a medieval torture device kind of thing.
That's actually a good idea. I should.
Yeah, right. Weird, like was it Iron Maiden with all the spikes in it?
Yeah, yeah.
Trapped in between.
As far as the pins that you have, because I've seen some artists, you know, they have maybe one or two pins that they have available, like, oh, you know, this is a really cool design, a lot of people liked it, so I made it into a pin, and here's my pin. As far as your like variety, you have, I'm trying to count here, at least like 12, 13 pins available on your site.
Yeah.
How, and you kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I'm really curious because Alex and I, we just had some stickers made, and getting those stickers made and coming to a conclusion on what would be good, what we think people would like to buy, what people would get, was difficult. How do you know, when you have an idea, especially when it comes to pins, because I feel like, at least for me, and again, I'm speaking for myself a lot here, but when I see a pin, I either need it or I don't care. Like,
right.
It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I could see where, you know, cool pin. Or then there's the give it to me. I'm throwing money at you. I need to have that on my backpack right now. So, you know, like,
yeah.
What's your creative process like when it comes to like making something like a pin where it can either be hit or miss with?
Yeah. I kind of started going at it with like, what pin would I want to wear? However, what I want to wear is not what everybody else wants to wear sometimes. So it's kind of been trial and error. Like when I started, I had a few different designs that like I thought they were cool, and they didn't really translate well into a pin. Like they were kind of hard to read unless you were like right up on somebody, which, you know, it's not the best thing in the world sometimes. So I don't know. It seems like, well, I'll do a bunch of doodles and then I'll kind of show those online, and if there's certain ones that people are gravitating towards, like, then I'll take that into consideration when I make the final pin. But yeah, I mean, I think my most popular ones is that cat on the skull one, and then there's like an owl with like a little hanging moon kind of thing, and then there's a skull and a flower coming out. I mean, it's like these really kind of standalone designs, I think, are always the best pin, something that you can see maybe from like at least 5 feet away. Ish. Usually work out pretty good. Although I have seen some really cool, super ornate pins. So, I mean, just for me, I guess it's, you know, I learn from each pin wave that I do, what works and what doesn't. And, there's one especially that I thought was going to be super cool. It's this huge one. Like I made like a 2.5-inch pin, and it's like this hill of graves. And I like drew it when I was sitting in a cemetery, and I'm like, this is going to be cool. It's going to be huge. I have sold maybe 3 of them. Give these things away. And I'm like, well, I think this is cool. But so that's one of those ones that I like it, but that's me. Which is fine. That's totally fine. So yeah, it's just trial and error. It's fun. You know, I always just have pin designs. So that's why I have so many of them. Is just they're really fun to make. So yeah.
How did you translate your style. I'm not sure how to describe it. Like if I was explaining it to Jared before I showed him your art, I was like, it's very swirly. There's a lot of swirls to it. There's a lot of light colors, and then to take like, you know, how you fill the page, and then go, okay, now you got to focus this into like a 2-inch by 2-inch somehow.
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Because I mean, the more finite, or the more what's what I'm looking for, the more, I guess, delicate the detail, the harder it's going to be on a pin to come out. And that's like the hardest part for me is I have a girl that I send my images to so she can vectorize them, and she's always like, "This won't work. You're against another like enamel. Like there needs to be something in between there." So it's kind of figuring out the logistics of the pin it's kind of hard for me to do. But yeah, it's mostly like simplifying down all the swirls. So it's an interesting kind of thought exercise for me to do, is how to make things a little bit more streamlined and more vectory, I guess, is the best way to put it. So all the like gradients and stuff that I use, have to just pick a color and go with it, make sure the lines are thick enough to be a good chunk of metal. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Like I'll have a cool design, and then it's how to make this actually work takes twice as long as actually designing it. So
Can we?
No, oh, go ahead. Alex.
What do you have?
No, I was going to change the subject, so take it away.
Can we talk about your style and how you got to it?
That's where I was going to go.
It's a good segue.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm like super inspired by like Art Nouveau and Art Deco. And I think when I was first kind of trying to figure out my own style, it was definitely more Art Nouveau driven, like the kind of organic lines, and that's kind of where all the swirls come from. But I don't have any really early pieces up on my website anymore, but it looked a little different. Like there was just kind of swirly lines going everywhere, and it kind of congealed into a solid-ish form. But over kind of the last almost 10 years, I guess, from doing comics, like I just kind of figured out a bit of a better system. So now I like using the swirls and stuff for like hair and trying to show like movement and kind of like atmosphere and stuff. And especially in like the Ghost the Owl, like to help bring the eye around the page. I really used all the swirls for that purpose. But yeah, I really like, 80s stuff, which also kind of lends itself to Art Deco a little bit with all the geometric kind of shapes and style there. But also like kind of spooky Victorian stuff too. So I've been getting into more of that and more kind of like introducing almost pen and ink into stuff. There's going to be a short story I did for John Carpenter's Tales for a Halloween Night #5, which should be coming out in October. But I did kind of my first thing that I've put out there of my swirls with a bit of a like pen and ink kind of 19th century engraving look-ish kind of mashed together. Because I'm just in like on a super dark spooky kick right now. it's where it's I've done so many bright colors, like I've kind of almost gone the complete opposite. and playing with more like dark purples and black and like muted colors, I guess, and sepias. So that's been kind of fun. So that's kind of where my inspiration is right now. Just like old timey Victorian illustrations and stuff. Edward Gorey like is a huge influence, and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Like I just love all that stuff. So I've been kind of trying to learn from that and see how I can incorporate my own take on some of that. But yeah, it's just all over the place. I'm kind of an art history nerd, especially in the Art Deco, Art Nouveau, and 19th century kind of stuff. So that's all kind of been poking its way into my style recently, I guess.
So what you had said with directing the eye or directing the flow of each piece is do you use your style to help do that? Like, do you throw them in afterwards, or do you already have them there as part of the plan when you start? Because we've talked to we've talked to like a graphic designer who like he does webcomics, but like also tells jokes with them, and he doesn't have a lot going on the page. And so the way he's able to take like a Venn diagram and turn it into a joke, because the punchline ends up where you would see it last somehow.
Right.
And it's like, so That's the thing I just don't think about is, wanting to show someone the entire page and have them see things in order like that.
Yeah. Like I usually have like the major direction I want the swirls to go in, but those definitely all kind of get filled in sort of stream of consciousness at the end. Like I'll have a major, like maybe one swirl, like so I can keep track of what direction I want the eye to go in, but then I'll add in all like the little secondary guys and stuff to build that out. So it's kind of half planned, half sort of just hope it all works out in the end kind of thing. Keeps it interesting anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I just shut my brain off and just see what happens. Listen to good music or true crime podcasts and see what happens.
Your turn.
Go ahead, Alex.
My
turn. That was the best one we've ever had.
Someday we'll be back in the studio together.
Oh man. I'm gonna take this one. I'm curious in that I've harped on it again and again in the show, and I don't have much talent when it comes to art. I wish I did, but now I just get to live, through my friends who do have art, and admire their work. In terms of style and your style, which I think I love the unique styles that you don't see much of, especially like walking down an artist alley, at New York Comic Con or something. It would jump out to me because it doesn't look like everyone else's stuff. So like how important do you kind of weigh having one's own style versus being able to kind of imitate art that we've seen, to try and, because like I don't want to say that this happens, but like, it's, if you could draw more like X, you'd probably be able to get work.
Right.
Do you think that it's a fine line that artists have to walk in having their own style, but also being able to imitate other people and what the masses would want? Or should artists focus on creating their own style and just going with that?
Yeah, it's hard to say because I feel like some people would consider their own style very close to maybe what's a classic comic style. I personally also really like the kind of far out there versions and styles that people will have, like versions of characters. Like if I'm going down an artist alley aisle and I see just like super wacky versions of like a character that you've seen a million times before, like I want to know what that artist is all about and where their influences come from. So it's more engaging for me to see that than just kind of a standard comic style. But some people look for that. So I don't know, personally, I like seeing how creative people can get and like how somebody draws a nose or hands, like just seeing the different ways people do that is really interesting to me. But yeah, no, I'm the same. I like the really far out stuff. Like all the commissions I've gotten from people. I try to go for the weirdest styles I can find and just the kind of out there stuff. But I think it depends on what you want to do with your career. Like if you want kind of more of the commercial comic direction for work, like I can see trying to hone in on what that classic style would be. But if you are a workaholic and you know how to push your stuff, like go for the crazy. And I think you could just have as much success with that too. I personally like the idea of the more adventurous out there kind of stuff though.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. I guess it just depends what you're going for. There's no bad. It's just when somebody is blatantly copying somebody else's style that gets a little lame when you can see directly who they're pulling from.
Right.
So.
Which some people, a lot of times and people have been cracking down on it, which is nice. But like you'll see literally just a booth with a wall of prints.
Yeah.
All with just totally ripped work.
Yep.
Just with a filter put over it.
Oh yeah.
Selling it.
Yeah, people will call out those vendors too. Like all the artists kind of have each other's backs. Like I remember Andy Price, like my buddy who works on My Little Pony too. He had one of his covers just yanked and put up on those walls too. And we had our rep go after the guy. Or we'll see like my friend Chris Minga gets his stuff ripped all the time too. We were just walking down an aisle with him, and it's like, hey Chris, nice earrings. And there's some girl who had like his art like just kind of put into earrings. So she was very sweet. Like we talked to her. I think it was her first time, and I don't think she knew that was a problem. So there are people who do know, and then there's some people new to comics who just don't. So it's kind of a case by case thing, but it is interesting. It's kind of flattering, but at the same time, you're like, oh man, I worked on that, Right. So yeah, it's interesting. Yep.
When people approach you for work, is there often times where they say, I want you to do this completely in your style, the way you would like to do it? Or do you get people who might approach you and say like, okay, could you do this, but normal? Yeah.
I did have one project where they're like, can you tone this back a bit and make it look more like this? I think it was actually How to Train Your Dragon. I did a short story for, and it's like one of my favorite movies. So I was like, yes, awesome. So I handed in something, like pretty swirly and crazy, and they sent back all these revisions. Like, this isn't accurate. You need to make the jaw look like this. And it's like, you saw what I had.
Right. And I feel like your style would work so well with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a lot of nitpicking, but there was some things where I did get to kind of go crazy with like I think there was like a lot of ocean and water, and so like that was pretty fun to make super swirly. But yeah, there's been a few things where, or even commissions too. Like I'll do I'll get asked to do like the Hulk or like a real beefy dude, and like I'll have like my skinny stylized Catwoman behind me, and I hand it back, and this one guy was like, oh, he's kind of girly. I'm like, you what's behind me? What are you expecting? There's people who are like, I really want to genuinely see what you do with this character, and then you do it, it's like, that's not the Hulk. It's like, yeah, shit. So it's interesting. I mean, that's just every so often. It doesn't happen all the time, but it sticks with you.
It's not the first time we've heard that. When
it's surprising how commissions can get sometimes. But
we had Nooligan on. And, and
fun. I like him.
He was telling us a story. Someone commissioned him to draw Vegeta, and he drew him in like a baseball uniform with a bat. Yes. And the guy was like, "Oh, it's like, what? Did you look at the rest of Nooligan's work? Like,
did you look at anything that was hanging up or all around him? He has prints everywhere.
He was gonna put him in chucks and gloves no matter what, dude."
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's just the blinders that go on sometimes, where it's just like, oh, bless. So, but I mean, with how many people go to a convention, that only happens every once in a while. So it's statistically gonna happen. But then you get a fun story out of it in retrospect. Always in retrospect. So,
I will say, I'm sorry if I keep cutting you off. I apologize.
No. I don't know how to end my sentences sometimes, other than trailing off into, yeah.
You definitely do have fans that get your style and your work, and they seem to have been like correct in what they're choosing to ask you to make. Because I'm browsing sketch prices right now, which is are you familiar?
Sketch prices?
Yeah, sketch prices.
Oh, maybe not. No, sorry.
So
yeah, it's a Facebook group.
It's a Facebook group, and a friend of ours put it together. It was his idea, where if you're going to a convention, you look up who artist is going to be there, you want a commission, but you don't know how much they charge. You can look up on this group to see what other people have gotten and what price they may have been at, so they know how much to bring to have an idea of what they might get charged. And
very cool.
A piece that stands out real well, which was posted in April. You did Blind Mag from Repo the Genetic Opera.
Yeah.
That
was. I didn't realize that got shared more than anything I've ever done, and I don't think that happened, because I'm like, here's a really cool obscure character that I'm just gonna draw, because the guy gave me a list of like 5 different things, and I'm like, that would be real cool. And it blew up. It was insane. It was really cool. But yeah, like that type of stuff, like a spooky lady. Give me that.
Well, I sent JR one of Pennywise that you had done 2 years ago. Looks like. And also from 2018, I'm a big fan of Typhoid Mary.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I love obscure X-Men characters to do, especially if they fall in those parameters. So cool, thank you. Yeah, that was a really fun one.
There's fans there, and there's lists or pages rather, I guess, on comic art fans that I looked at. Oh yeah,
too. I haven't been on that site in a while.
Yeah, I forget about it, but it never gets old.
Right, yeah.
Is that like the equivalent of like an actor like Googling themselves, like an artist going to comic art fans? Like you don't go to comic art fans. You don't go there.
Because I remember like going on it once, and there were some comments that were kind of mean. I'm like, why do I do this to myself? It's that, and honestly, like when I was, because I'm not working on My Little Pony anymore right now. I'm taking a break. But I would go on Equestria Daily and see what people are saying about my covers. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it was very nice. But every once in a while, there's a stinger in there. So I just stopped going. But
well, then you can just chill out with your Eisner and Ringo nominations and just the nerds can suck it.
Yeah.
But
I've got feelings too, man.
Seriously, like that's what.
Speaking of commissions, I found one you did for me from 2010.
What?
Yeah, I gave you like a choice of it was like a custom character. He kind of looked like me, but he had a top hat and a big silly mustache. And I was like, okay, like do this in your style, like just go crazy, do however you do this thing, because that's what I'm looking for. And I'm kind of because I put all those that I have in a folder and kind of put them away, and I'm sad like I haven't looked at it in a while, because I took it out again for this purpose to check it out, and I'm like, there's so much you put into it.
Oh man, I can't like. I'll see stuff that pops up on Facebook from around that time too, and it's just like, who drew this? What? Oh, but that's cool. So you must see, like, I was talking about, like, there's just lines going everywhere. I mean, that was when I was still figure out what's going on. I'm just like, Art Nouveau pretty, make work. That's so cool. That's awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
And we were trying to remember, we think that was the first Boston Comic-Con.
Oh, memories.
Yeah. That we went to. I think it was the first one that we went to, but I think that was the second ever.
Was that the basement one?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, yes, I remember that fondly. It was very fun. I was scared to death.
Yeah, I mean, fire code was being enforced a little bit, at least, but it was packed and there was a line way out the door, and but that was like aside from New York Comic Con, that was like my first like this smaller show where it's just artist heavy. It was just rows and rows of artists, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Boston, like, until sort of recently, has always been really art focused, and that's why I've always loved it. Like, my rep for Bob Shaw from Comic Art House, like, he is a really big hand in artist organization for that, and he's a huge art guy, obviously. So he always made an effort to bring in as many artists, and he's awesome for that. So I think he had a huge part in why there were so many artists at that one. So. I think that was like one of my first comic cons too, because I'd gone to a ton of anime cons like through high school and college. I never really set up at them. I just always cosplayed. But I think that Boston Comic Con was my first like sit down business time con. So it was cool.
In terms of conventions themselves, because we don't have any right now, aside from there are a lot of shows doing online versions of the show, which I mean, even just last week, there's a popular thing that happens twice a year is called GDQ, Games Done Quick, which is where a bunch of video gaming speedrunners get together and they play games for a week straight, 24 hours a day, and they raise a ton of money, like millions of dollars, for, I believe it's cancer research, if I recall.
Okay,
but
cool.
And they usually get a big venue, and they have a giant crowd, and you can watch the people play the games, and you can also watch it online and all that stuff. And with the pandemic, they had to do the entire thing online, and I was a little nervous. I was like, I hope they're still able to get the numbers and the eyes on it that they normally would. And like while viewership was down a little bit, they still raised over $2 million, which is bonkers.
That's
But
awesome.
that's my right, isn't it? It's just really neat. It's just watching a bunch of people play video games, and then
Yeah.
people can donate and get incentives and all this stuff. It's really rad.
Oh,
But this is my really, really, really long way and roundabout way of getting to, we don't have conventions right now, which sucks, but it's also necessary for what's going on in terms of staying busy and keeping occupied and getting, keeping your work out there in the pandemic. How has it been a struggle for you, or have you, been able to adapt to what's going on?
it's, I try to be pretty regular with my Instagram posts, and I find that Instagram is probably my favorite way of putting stuff out there. So I've been trying to keep up with that just as much as I would have during the year if it was like a normal in the before times time. But yeah, it's been a little tricky because I don't have as many commissions to show. I just finished something that was under an NDA, so I can't show anything from that. So like I've been showing a lot of kind of like past work on my Instagram. But I have been working on a couple like creator owned things. Like I've been kind of on and off working on like an oracle set of just owls. So I've been trying to show those when I can. And then a kind of a collection of short ghost stories that I've been trying to show little sneak peeks of that. And then there's yeah, I don't know. It's just trying to keep up with all the doodling and trying to show something there too. Yeah, it's been a little tricky. But it's just I don't have as many interesting places I'm at
Right.
to go up on there too. So it's been more art heavy, which I guess is the point. So
And it's been weird too, because like I remember at the beginning of all this, everyone was very motivated.
yeah,
I was trying to be motivated. I'm going to learn a new skill.
yeah,
I'm going to learn French. And like, it was all, what are you doing during pandemic to better yourself? Because you might as well do something. And then
yeah.
it eventually shifted into, you know what? You don't have to do stuff. Don't feel bad about it. Don't. And like,
Pause. It's a pause year. I'll come
yeah.
back. Yeah.
And like, it's one of those, it's also, even despite all the free time, it can be difficult to get motivated.
Yeah.
Which is just the weirdest sensation.
I know. It's really weird. Like, I mean, my goal is to come out of this with a whole bunch of new stuff. Like that book I was mentioning, I want that to be ready to go to be printed. And I've been like talking with Source Point Press, about doing it. So I just got to finish it. I'm like almost 3/4 of the way done. So I'm hoping to have that ready to go for when cons start up again. Like I want to have a whole bunch of new art. Like I don't want to completely reinvent myself, but it'll be more kind of what I had at last year's New York. So like kind of more of the spooky kind of like light macabre is what I'm going for. 'Cause like as much as I love all the pony stuff, that was, I don't that doesn't represent me, So I want to focus on more original content, which will be kind of more of like the Forever Halloween kind of stuff that I want to do.
Right.
So yeah, it's just kind of setting goals. I was kind of talking with a publisher of potentially becoming my own imprint. So that's kind of another goal that I'm trying to work towards as well. So it's, yeah, I mean, setting those goals is definitely the thing to do. And also not berating yourself for taking a relaxing day or a research day or something. Because I still have the tendency to just like go as hard as I can to get a deadline done. And then I'm just burnt out after it. So treating myself to watching some just period drama at this point. I've been hooked on the Nick, so I've been watching that for inspiration and also to give my brain a break. But yeah, it's tricky and the motivation's hard. It's but just setting a goal. Do a dream board, I guess.
As far as your upcoming work, I did see something was just announced. I mentioned it in my long-winded introduction with the Greek mythology book.
Yeah.
Which I am a sucker for Greek mythology ever since high school and reading. Yeah. I got obsessed with the Odyssey my freshman year of high school, which has a lot of that in it, and it's just been kind of like a side thing. Like I don't consider myself anywhere near to be an expert or even like an amateur. I just think Greek mythology is dope.
Yeah.
What was it like working on that project? What can we expect from that project? I was trying to like look into a little bit. I can't tell. Is it a kid's book? Is this going to be for kind of everyone? What's going on with the Greek mythology book?
Yeah. So that was that big NDA project. So that's why I couldn't show a whole lot of stuff recently.
Right.
But it's going to be an all ages kind of reference book. So I did 25 illustrations, and it'll be a 240 page book. So there's going to be pretty good chunks of information for each tale, basically. I've got 25 characters or stories to do an illustration for. And then the author is super awesome. It's Liv Albert, who does the podcast Let's Talk About Myths, Baby. And yeah, so she's like super conversational with all her Greek mythology and like kind of breaks it down into more of a conversational sort of digestible bits. Because I get so confused on all the names. Like I did lots of research for this and was constantly finding the wrong EOS name for something. But it was really fun. It was really cool. They really wanted like a really bright palette because they're looking at how popular lore is, and like everybody remembers Hercules, the Disney cartoon. So it's really bright. It's gonna be a nice like super bright palette for every illustration. But yeah, it was super cool. It's my first Simon and Schuster, so I was so excited to do that. Yeah, I'm so excited for it to come out. Like it's not coming out till March. Like I honestly just handed in the last illustration last Friday. So, but yeah, it's out for pre-order on Simon and Schuster, or you can find it on Amazon or your like local bookstores, or what I try to push first. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. The author is super sweet. The people who put it together are awesome. It's gonna be a really really cool book. But yeah, it's for everybody. It's gonna be a cool reference book with some arts that I did do in there. So,
are you I'm on the Simon & Schuster website now. Are you the sole artist on that?
Yep.
Dope. I'm gonna have to, and I think I copied this down in time. It's Let's Talk About Myths, Baby.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to go check that out. Just based on the name alone, that sold me.
Yeah, she's fun. Yeah, I think you'll like it a lot, and she's a super sweetheart. So, really cool person. Yeah. So super excited for it. It's just so far away.
Yeah, that comes out. I think I wrote this down somewhere.
Yeah, March next year. But hopefully, like ready for shows to start up again. So that's kind of one of the things I was hoping for, is to have like a book ready to go next year. So partial goal met. Hooray!
Now we just need the people to start wearing their masks so we can.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
Up and over the nose, people. Up and over the nose.
Oh my God, the rage is bubbling. I'm just gonna let it ebb.
Alex, do you have something?
I'm still browsing your Instagram, and there's a few items that I get stuck on because I was like, oh, that's so cool. Two of which I've singled out. You did a Squirrely Dan from Letterkenny.
Allegedly.
So that one looks that looks really fun, and the Great Owl from Secret of Nim.
Yeah, that's over at Gallery 1988. I did that for the Crazy for Cult show, and it's like all cult movies. And like I do a bunch of stuff for Gallery 1988, like all the group shows. I just finished a Mallrats piece that I'll be sending out, and a fake gig poster for the Sanderson sisters for a Hocus Pocus kind of theme thing. So I'll post those up when I can, but I think the show's ending next month, so that'll be out soon. But yeah, I love. I mean, it's a spooky owl, so obviously I had to do it. But yeah, and then Letterkenny is one of my favorite shows, so that was a commission for my buddy Mike, and he's a huge Letterkenny fan, and he looks like Jimmy Dickens, so it just all kind of works out. But yeah, I was supposed to be a skid with my friend Sarah. It's gonna be rad, but I mean, we might still do it on Zoom or something. Yep.
Our friend Babs will not say Dickens. She'll call him Dickskin every time.
I know. I almost did. I was like,
it's a joke about the show anyway.
Yep.
So let's move on. I've been seeing it as I've been following your work, and well, not really your work, but your posts. And JR recently discovered it about when you go out and clean gravestones.
Yeah.
And that's always been super interesting. And only once in a while do you post like the process of how you go about it. And a lot of it comes with warning of what not to do, so no one ruins these old.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully, with the weather getting a little cooler, there'll be much more coming out. It's so hard to go out into a cemetery in the open sun to clean a stone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there hasn't been too many recently. But yeah, it's a thing me and my mom have done for a few years. And I just recently, finally gave it a name to have like a little account for it. Cause I'll post them every once in a while, and I was posting them on my art sites and was just getting a lot of questions about like, how do you do this? What's like the best way to do this for like someone's own family? So I'm like, if I just do its own separate thing, I can kind of organize myself a little bit better, I guess. But yeah, so it's the Graveside Ladies is what we ended up calling it. But it's me and my mom, just go out and clean gravestones. Right now, we kind of stick to one cemetery. One of the things is, talking to the trustee of whatever cemetery you go to do this. It's kind of not illegal, but it's not understood that you're doing something helpful sometimes. Mm-hmm. There have been people who've gotten arrested for doing this.
Really?
Yeah. My mom learned from New Hampshire Old Graveyard Association, or NOGA, and they taught her all the ways to clean a stone. Which I'll say on the site too. It's soft brushes only, no metal, no power washers. It's basically like a garden sprayer. The solution called D2 or Wet and Forget. It's like a natural kind of lichen algae killer kind of thing. Like D2 they use on the monuments at Arlington and I think in DC on all the marble there. And then Wet and Forget's just kind of like the cheaper but still just as good version, because D2 gets super expensive. But yeah, there's really good tutorials online too on how to do it, and I'll put directions or what we use on each of the or on some of the pictures anyway. But yeah, it's cool. Like I love cemeteries already, and like me and my mom, it's a mother-daughter time, which is super fun. And then after we try and find like the history of the person that we clean the stone of. So that gets into a whole other like genealogical kind of ancestry.com rabbit hole. And sometimes trying to like do some detective work too, if you're trying to figure out how the person died. Like ancestry.com has like all the death records and everything, so it just kind of adds like another layer. And I'll try to put that information on each of the pictures too, to just kind of give context to somebody's there. It's not just a stone, like it's someone's memorial. But the reason we do it too is a lot of these people don't have records, and like that stone is the only thing that has their name on it. So what happens, especially up in New England, and anything under a tree, you get like all the lichen that falls on there, or like even the acid rain and stuff will get into the stone and break it apart sometimes. And once that's broken, like, and there's no records of that person, you're basically erased, which is like the saddest thing in the world. So yeah, it just feels kind of good, to try and preserve somebody's memory. And some of these stones too, like they look kind of crusty and dirty, and just once you clean them and see what they looked like when they first were put in is really cool. Like there's a couple really pretty like white marble Victorian stones that we cleaned a few years ago, and the solution that goes on them just cleans over time, so they just get whiter and whiter. And it's really cool to see a stone from like 1880 look brand new. So there's a few of those on my Instagram. There's like a couple of the kind of like pointed Victorian stones that are just super cool to see like do again. But yeah. I mean, if anybody ever wants to know how to clean a stone, please don't hesitate to ask me online. Like I can go on and on about this. But there will definitely be more pictures coming up soon, since it's getting to be like the perfect weather for it. So yeah.
Is there any kind of process or decision making that goes into which ones you'll do and when?
Yeah. So there's one right now that I'm not scrubbing. Like a lot of those real sturdy, especially granite ones, you can give a light scrub to. There's one right now that I'm just spraying with the solution to see if it whitens up, because it's a super ornate, really tall Victorian stone, and it's just pitch black right now. But you can see that it was definitely just a pure white stone at one point. So there's like, you kind of have to look at what the stone's made out of and how sturdy it is too. So especially if something looks like it's wobbly and barely standing up, we don't touch those, because you can do, more harm than good, which is also why it's like I said, not illegal to do, but you can get in trouble for doing it, because a lot of stones have been ruined by people with good intentions, just not using the right tools, or using too harsh of a tool, and ends up, damaging the stone. So, a lot of the marble ones, they don't need cleaning, because marble's super soft and you're only supposed to clean it once every 10 years. But, like if you find one of the super old slate ones, those can break apart in pieces. So it's just kind of like picking out a stone that looks like it's really sturdy, especially if it's covered in lichen, you want to get that off, but, because that will grow into it and break it apart. So yeah, we just try to find the ones that you can't read the names on it anymore. So, cause like I said, they might not have a record otherwise, and slate is like, vertically put together. So if it just shingles off, like that's all the information that comes off on the ground. So, yeah, we try to get those ones before that happens. Yeah.
Just looking at there's an Instagram that, I believe was linked on your Instagram. Yes, it was. But it's the Graveside Ladies. It's _Graveside_ladies.
Yep.
Even just the first post, which talks about a 29-year-old doctor who died from smallpox, and then due to lack of knowledge of contagious illnesses in the day, he was not allowed to even be buried in the town cemetery. So it's like he was buried, like, in a distant plot. Like, it's just, I would never know this. I would never have the influence to like kind of look into that. I'd be like, oh, hey, look, it's a gravestone. And then I would keep walking, but like I have something that's telling me there's more to this.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. Like, you don't get a full story from just somebody's name sometimes. It's just like that extra digging that really puts it into digging. Sorry. That, it really makes it, you feel even better after. So you're like, wow, like that doctor cured a family, and then, he catches what they had and they put him out in the woods. And even seeing that stone, like whoever lived in that area used it as target practice. So that's why there's little pock marks on it.
Right.
And after just cleaning out that little plot, like it just felt so good to like give that guy a little bit of respect, Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting if you just pick a name out and go on Ancestry.com, look them up, and you just even get a little blurb of what they did. It just kind of gives a face to, obviously somebody you don't see.
The before and after pictures are insane.
It's cool.
Too. Like, it's crazy how, because like when you see a gravestone, it's a gravestone. You don't realize how filthy and like just overgrown. And there's the video of like the lichen getting scraped off.
Yeah.
Which like it doesn't even look like there's like that much, but it's like, oh my god, there's like layers.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, those oddly satisfying videos.
Yep.
It's like that, but in real life. Yep. So yeah, it's cool. Like that before and after is really awesome. It's cool to see where something comes from and what's just underneath, just a little layer. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. It's just so much fun to do, and it just, it shouldn't be held as like such a, I feel like people think it's kind of spooky and like, why would you do this? But it's like, cemeteries used to be a place where people would go for picnics. Like Victorians, especially Mount Auburn Cemetery, was like, people would go to have picnics there and just like not think anything of it, So, anybody hasn't taken a trip to see your relative's grave, or maybe do some family history and see where your families are buried and make sure their stones are looking good.
That is the perfect segue. Because in doing, looking on your website, it mentioned that you are the 10th great granddaughter of one of the victims of the Salem Witch Trials.
Yep.
in which, looking into that, like I did Googling, because you put the name of Margaret Scott, Margaret Scott has her own Wikipedia page,
Mm-hmm.
which chronicles what she was put through, which just reading it, I was telling Alex before we connected with you, like, I was mad.
Yeah.
Like, we were so stupid. Like, and like, it's one of those, another, I don't really have like a question on it. Like, what's it like to be an ancestor? It's just, it's so interesting. Like,
Yeah.
and also infuriating.
Yep.
And like, I think, you mentioned there is like the stigma around graveyards and, people might think that you're vandalizing, but like, people deserve to be honored.
Yeah.
Especially people like Margaret, who was just trying to raise a family after, according to Wikipedia, after her husband died and left her with 60 something pounds to survive off for the rest of her life.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I try to mention her as much as possible because she's like, obviously went through that, and then she's kind of one of the lesser known victims of that. But yeah, also just to spread, awareness that like they weren't witches, not like anything's bad with that, but they were just executed for having land because some other shitty guy wanted their land, or it's like layers deeper than just kind of like, and I lived in Salem, like I see the kitschiness of it. I lived there for a couple of years, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that these are real people too. So it's kind of cool to see a few of the monuments that have gone up around Salem. She's got a little monument in Rowley, Mass, because that's where she's from. So there's a little stone in between like 3 streets that has her name on it, and I think I visited her house, or at least her son's house. I just kind of drove by because my mom wanted to see it because she did all the genealogy and stuff. But yeah, like when I was in Salem, I'd always leave like a little thing on her little memorial in the witch memorial there. But yeah, it's, I just try to mention her as much as possible because, I don't want her to be forgotten. She won't be because, she's got her name in a few different places, which is great. But yeah.
In case anyone was wondering, she was accused of witchcraft, and someone claimed that and again, this is off Wikipedia, so I'm not sure how accurate, but they claimed that she turned invisible and hit someone with a stick.
Yep. The old invisible stick hitting runs in the family.
Yep. And then at the trial, someone was claiming that she was suffocating her and using her powers and all that. And then they hung her.
Yeah. Yep.
Or hanged. It's like hanged.
Oh, no, it's fine. At least you're not saying they set her on fire. That's one of the things that in Salem, they're like, do they burn them? It's like, no, that's Europe. But, yeah, she was the oldest of the people who were hanged. So, I mean, imagine, like, marching a little old lady up to what is now behind the Walgreens in Salem, to the little hill. It's just like, if I could just, one historical backhand, it's just everybody. I wish I could. Oh, that'd be great.
It's just sad, but it's also, I don't know. I think I don't want to make connections for you, but I think that honoring the dead and with what you do with the graveside ladies, I think it's just really rad. And it was also a fun thing to stumble upon in kind of researching for this episode and things to talk about with you. It's like, a lot of the times it's here's my art website. Thank you for liking my art. And then it was also like, oh, there's this side thing with the graveside ladies. What is this? And I like specifically went to Alex and I was like, okay, can we talk about this for a second?
Yeah, if you guys ever interview somebody who does that too, I'd love to meet them. Yeah, it's just kind of like, it's a goal of mine to just kind of do more of that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just bringing light, I guess, to these macabre subjects. I think a lot of people just write them off as like spooky and weird, but it's like it's memorializing somebody, like just because they're dead doesn't make it like a spooky weird thing. Like they were a person once, that whole like the hashtag like death positive movement has been something that I've been kind of looking into more. So a lot of my stuff is like like a hashtag death positive if it's kind of like a lighter piece that is kind of just it's macabre or it's like death related, but it's not like spooky. I don't know, it doesn't always have to be spooky, even though that's where I like it. I'm kind of talking myself in circles. I don't know. Stream of consciousness. Yeah.
As far as, because we've been mentioning Instagrams and websites and all that stuff, where in, especially during times of pandemic where people aren't able to see you at conventions, unless there's anything that you're going to be doing virtually. Where can people go to see your work if they wanted to? I mean, if they wanted to buy a print or a pin, we talked at length about pins at the beginning, or if they even wanted to support you, because I do believe you have a Patreon as well.
Yeah.
Where can people go to kind of see your stuff?
Yeah, so it's sararichard.com, SARARICHARD.com has I redid my whole website last year, so that's all updated, and there's links to Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. There's also links to I have some Society 6 stuff and links to the Gallery 1988 stuff too, which it has been kind of cool and sort of my in-between convention thing because it's all pop culture related, but it's stuff that I actually can't bring to cons anyway, so that's all exclusive stuff over through the gallery. But yeah, I mean that kind of sends you to a store link too. I have my shop up there on my homepage. Yeah, and then I'll usually post. I need to make a section for upcoming appearances when that's a thing again. But like Twitter, I'll announce where I'm going to be next, or on Facebook or there. Yeah, so pretty much that. I post mostly on Instagram anyway. Twitter is more for just retweeting crazy political shit. So Instagram
Same.
yeah, right. It's an outlet for sure, but not so much art driven. So yeah, Instagram is probably where it's at for kind of sneak peeks. But also on my website is my Patreon, where I do have I'll put out even more sneakier, peekier stuff, I guess. A lot of I can't show NDA stuff, but I'll show some of the Gallery 1988 pieces that I won't show on my general social media for at least a little bit anyway. And then yeah, my Patreon, I'm still working on it right now, but I'll send out exclusive prints yearly. I try to do that, and then just kind of updates, and you get a discount code to my store through my Patreon as well. And it's been really helping me out through, obviously this time with no cons. So if you guys want to check that out, that would be cool.
Alex, do you have any last things, anything you wanted to follow up with, or?
So this is one that I didn't know about and didn't find until JR first mentioned it. And then I saw images popping up on Comic Art Fans with the DC tarot cards that you would.
Yeah.
Did you decide who was going to be what, or was that decided by someone else? As far as this person's the Nine of Cups and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. So I came up with a list and then DC came up with a list, and it kind of merged. Because there's a lot of characters I had no idea about. I grew up more on Marvel, so I could probably find some more obscure characters on the Marvel side, but I sure as heck did learn who Captain Boomerang was, and there's a few other real obscure guys too, Shining Knight.
Yeah, I
think. Yeah, still don't know who he is, but it's cool because I got to squeak in a few Watchmen characters too. So Dr. Manhattan, Ozymandias is two of the ones that I really wanted Dexter to be in there, but they said for some reason, I think it was royalty stuff, that we couldn't put him in there. But yeah, it was neat. There were a few characters I got to kind of talk them into switching around because I did a lot of research, and there was just certain people who would fit better if they moved around a bit. But for the most part, yeah, it was kind of like a half and half split between me and DC. I really wish they would have come out with a book with it, a little guidebook. That's the question I get asked the most is who is this? So I was kind of bummed they didn't have a book with it, and I'm doubly bummed that DC Collectibles doesn't exist anymore. So I'm really hoping to have I was hoping for a reprint of that because it's been sold out for a while, and I've got 2 sets left for emergency rainy day funds kind of thing. But yeah, I can't find the Greek mythology book or 2 bucket list things. I love both those things. I'm really happy I got to do both those projects. So yeah, it was a fun project. really liked it.
I didn't realize that's what I was looking at because I told JR, I was like, oh, she's got a Saint Walker. I dig Saint Walker.
Yeah,
Only to realize he's the Two of Cups.
Yep.
And JR, the Queen of Wands, Zatanna.
Yeah.
There's a few of them that are like, I mean, I think Harley's like the Fool, and it's like there's a few that just kind of lend themselves to it. But yeah, I think I did that project while I was moving cross country too. So there's a few cards I wish I could redo because it was getting a little tight towards the end, towards the end of that deadline. But yeah,
I don't know anything about tarot myself, but I've always been like mildly fascinated by it, just because I don't know. I like decks of cards and I like the illustrations on them. But I'm not into really divination myself.
right.
But I do think a lot of them. My favorite, quote unquote, is the Hermit.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the classic design of like the guy like holding the lantern or whatever it is. I just really like that. Probably a good tattoo idea. But like I immediately, when I saw that you had made the tarot set, I was like, "Who's the Hermit? Who's the Hermit?" And then, Alex, do you know who it is?
No.
It's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
like somebody else. I'm like, it has to be Dr. Manhattan. Like, there's nobody else. I mean, there's probably another character, but like, he just fits that card so well.
Yep.
Plus, the colors are super fun. Like, I mean, just from art nerd perspective, yeah, that's one of my favorites. Also, trying to make sure he's not like trying to draw him so nothing's hanging down was really fun.
Oh.
Yep. A child.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll reprint that at some point because
So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried to contact somebody where I'm like, hey, I'm getting like all these requests for this somewhere, and just I never heard back.
Mhm.
So, womp.
well, you heard it here. If anyone from DC happens to be listening to a random episode of a podcast, reprint the damn tarot set.
Please. I don't know what to tell people anymore.
I mean, thanks for buying it, I guess.
Yeah,
the ones who did buy it.
Yeah.
But Sarah, I'm gonna start wrapping up now. We've taken up a lot of your time already. This was so much fun. Can't thank you enough for coming on.
Well, thanks.
I'm psyched to get the prints. For what it's worth, I snagged the Morticia and Gomez. Oh my god! Like, it's so good.
That's on my list too.
Because it's like gravestones, and Morticia and Gomez are just the best. And yeah, it's one of my favorite prints. That one I get asked why she's missing an arm so much. It's for compositional purposes. Good. The bust.
Oh man.
Anyway.
I'm psyched. I mean, I don't know, maybe blame it on the fall weather, but that's going right up on the walls.
That's the year. I'm so excited for fall. I wish it lasted like all year round. So.
Yeah.
It's amazing how like the second mid-August hits, it's like, oh great, I'm so happy it's fall.
Yeah. Give me some pumpkin. Give me some pumpkin everything. I've been trying to put off Shipyard, the Pumpkinhead beer, for as long as I can, because it's still slightly too hot for it, and I want it to be like the most perfect setting for the first sip of Pumpkinhead this year. So, because God damn it, I deserve it.
I'd say after this year, yeah, I'd say you deserve that perfect perfect first sip. But this was great, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
I know. Hopefully, we'll be able to go to shows again sometime in the hopefully near future. But until then, go to sararichard.com. It's Sara Richard Art on Instagram, Sara Richard on Patreon. Probably just put in Sarah with Richard without an H, and you'll probably find it.
Yeah.
Without an H on Sarah. I mean, not in Richard. But go and check out all the sites, all the photos, and all the merch and all that fun stuff. And again, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been great to talk to the outside world.
Isn't it? If there's one good thing about still maintaining a podcast for all this is we get to talk to someone.
There you go.
All right. That is going to do it for this week. Until next time, I've been JR.
I'm Alex.
I'm Sara Richard.
And this has been episode 410 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you liked that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.